One of the great things about Chapter 15 is that it's both short and easy to understand. We will get into monopolistic competition, which is the last of the four types of market structures that we'll get to in this course, and also some product differentiation, um, which you may recognize when we get to it. So, first of all, let's get into monopolistic competition. This means that there are many producers, many sellers in the industry, much like perfect competition, but not quite as many. But each producer, each seller has a differentiated product. That means there is something different. The book gives a great example of the food court at the mall. There is all sorts of fast food options at this food court, but the Chinese food is obviously different than the hamburger place, which is obviously different than the burrito place. There's also free entry into and exit from this industry in the long run. There are no barriers to entry like there are with a monopoly and with an oligopoly. So don't be confused by the term monopolistic competition. It's not a monopoly at all. You will see in a little bit there are some aspects where this type of market behaves like a monopoly, but it's not at all a monopoly. Um, so product differentiation is a big role, has a big role in monopolistically competitive industries because tacit collusion among every seller, every producer, is pretty much impossible when there are so many producers out there in the world. The gas stations of Northwest Indiana, though you may think are conspiring to have high prices, they really aren't. It's virtually impossible. There are dozens, if not hundreds, of no, probably dozens of gas stations in Northwest Indiana, and for all of them to agree to have a set a high price, and none of them to break this cartel or collusion would be impossible. It just wouldn't happen. Um, Anyway, product differentiation is the only way for these firms in a monopolistically competitive market to have some market power. Um, chocolate is a good example. You know, you could buy a bar of Hershey's chocolate for a little under $1. But to get some really expensive chocolate from a high-end shop, chocolate boutique, for example, um, would be probably a couple dollars per ounce, depending on where you got it. So the difference could be in the minds of the consumers or in the products themselves. It's hard to tell. We can differentiate in three different ways. You could differentiate by style or type, by location, and you'll see that a lot with service industries like gas stations or a dry cleaner that's closer to your home or closer to your work compared to ones that are further away. And then going back to the chocolate example, we differentiate by quality, ordinary versus gourmet chocolate. Um, so in monopolistic competition, there is definitely competition among sellers, and they value the 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 value that consumers get because of this increased diversity of products. Um, a couple of attributes there. So there is some features that are typical of a monopoly, even though monopolistic competition is different. Um, Primarily, in a monopolistic competition market, there is a downward sloping demand curve, which and the marginal um, price or marginal revenue is lower uh, than price. So price is set above marginal revenue. So there is some market power. There's some limits to this power, but they can determine the price of their product. But there's a lot of competition, so a lot of the product it sells, they sell depends on the price and the product offered by the other firms, which is partially for the explains the downward sloping demand curve. So in the short run, there's a downward sloping demand curve and a downward sloping marginal revenue curve. And there's some upward sloping marginal costs in a U-shaped average total cost curve. There's some fixed costs involved. So here we'll see a monopolistically competitive firm in the short run. On the left, you'll see a profitable firm where the optimal point of production, marginal cost equals marginal revenue. We go up to average total cost and price, and we'll see that price is above the average total cost point. This point right here is the profit. In an unprofitable firm, the same case, marginal cost, marginal revenue intersect. We go up to the average total cost curve to find our costs, and you can see it's above the price, the demand here. So this point in between here is the loss. This difference times the quantity is the loss. It's a loss of minimizing quality, but it's quantity, but it's still a loss. Obviously, this is the short run. In the long run, if the firms were unprofitable, we'll get into that, but there's no reason they would stay in the market for a loss. So in the long run, if there's positive profits, as I kind of just mentioned, new firms will enter the industry. If there's a loss, firms will exit the industry. So when firms enter the industry, this shifts the demand curve to the left. This may not be intuitive, but and this is just per firm, not the total demand curve. And then we're not talking about supply curve, we're talking about demand. So think of it this way: if there are 10 gas stations on your way to work or school, and then 5 more enter into the market, you'll have 15, and that means this, assuming nothing changes in the population or anything, each gas station is now selling less gas because there's more options out there, which would shift the firm's demand curve to the left. Vice versa, if you had 10 gas stations on your way to school and 5 of them left the industry, they would sell more. Each gas station left would sell more gas, so the demand curve would shift to the right. So in the long run, there is zero profit equilibrium. Firms will just break even because of this trend in the marketplace, or what happens in the marketplace over the long run. And as you would expect, the demand curve is just tangent, or it looks like it intersects, to its average total cost curve at the profit maximizing output. So you see the effects of entry. Demand and marginal revenue will shift to the left if new firms enter the market, and this is just for one firm here. This is the demand and marginal revenue curves for one firm. If a lot of firms exit the industry, one firm's demand and marginal revenue will shift to the right. So in the long run, here's the zero profit equilibrium. And the point of tangency, marginal revenue equals marginal cost, of course. You go up, and it looks like the demand, which is also the price here, the price will equal average total cost at the profit maximizing area. So in the long run, there are many firms all earning zero economic profit, not accounting profit. So price, and you'll see, is larger than marginal cost. So there are some beneficial transactions that won't take place. So and that's the difference between monopolistic competition and perfect competition. And we're going to contrast that here. So in the long run, perfect competition, price equals marginal cost equals marginal revenue equals average total cost, all at this point. In monopolistic competition, price equals average total cost here, but marginal revenue equals marginal cost down here. Here, this point over here is where minimum cost would be, and that would be the effect of a perfect competition. But in a monopolistic competition, there is, well, you could call it inefficiencies in the market. And this is where there's some debate among economists. They do monopolistic competition. There are companies that produce less than the output, where average total cost is minimized. So there's these unexploited, mutually beneficial trades, and there's a higher price that consumers pay because of excess capacity. But this is offset because of the value they get from diversity. In perfect competition, going back to the food court example, every single place in the food court would be a hamburger place. You wouldn't have the option of Chinese or a burrito or whatever. So there's some value to diversity. So that's obviously not a source of inefficiency. So it's not really clear if there's inefficiency or not. There's some debate. So there's also differentiation, which is advertising and brand names. Obviously, companies advertise to increase the demand for their products. It's not necessarily a waste of resources if you're telling about your products, the information. But if you're just simply touting the product, which is, I would guess, 99% of advertising out there, and that's maybe not quite so beneficial. So this kind of proves that either consumers are irrational, or that expensive advertising communicates that the firm's products are of high quality, which may or may not be the case. So there's brand names. I think everyone knows what brand names are, and kind of getting into like Coke, what the value of Coke's brand name, or the book says McDonald's, the value of its brand name is actually worth more than the value of all its its fryers and its all the equipment it uses. I think the advertising and differentiation is kind of self-explanatory. If you read the book, you should be able to get it. So that was chapter 15. We're in the home stretch here, and onward and upward to chapter 16.